A major cyber attack hits NHS hospitals and GP surgeries across Britain. Dozens of trusts in England and 5 health boards in Scotland are affected. IT systems have been shut down and patients turned away for non-urgent operations.
When we turned up, they said, "We've got terrible news, unfortunately, you're going to have to be sent away because all of the computer systems are down due to a virus."
Hackers are demanding a ransom, and it's feared the virus is spreading. Also tonight, Corbyn vows to keep Britain safe and claims the war on terror has failed. 18 British soldiers could face charges over the Bloody Sunday shootings. And a new tirade from Trump over the sacking of his former FBI director.
This is the ITV Evening News with Ranveer Singh.
Good evening. Major incidents have been declared at hospitals and GP surgeries across England and Scotland tonight after they were hit by a cyber attack. In some areas, accident and emergency departments turned patients away, ambulances were diverted and routine operations cancelled. Dozens of NHS trusts in England and 5 NHS boards in Scotland are known to have been hit. It's thought computers were infected by new malware called Wanna Decryptor, which then threatens to destroy data unless a ransom is paid. Paul Davies has the latest.
It is a sinister development. The very people we turn to when we're sick or injured, themselves under a concerted and highly sophisticated attack. Hospitals and other NHS organisations only realising something was wrong when someone appeared to take control of their vital computer systems. And then this message, demanding immediate payment, with the threat that invaluable records would be deleted in a week if the money wasn't paid. The result is chaos. At the hospitals affected, treatment has been postponed and ambulances diverted. Not all hospitals have been targeted, but those that have are widespread. NHS Digital says at least 16 of their organisations across England have been hit, with at least 5 health boards in Scotland also reporting serious problems. The National Cyber Security Centre says it's aware of a cyber incident and is working with NHS Digital and the National Crime Agency to investigate. When Emma Simpson took her son Seb for a check on his broken toe, they joined the thousands of patients inconvenienced.
We turned up and for our appointment to have his foot checked, and they said, "I'm really sorry, but the computer system is down. You're going to have to go away. We can't have any appointments. It would be dangerous to do so because we can't access any of the files. So you'll have to go away." And then there was an announcement that the files would be down with this virus until at least Monday.
Staff at a Nottinghamshire hospital sent us these pictures of their IT system switched off, major incident documents on the table. This Liverpool doctor described the impact.
So we've become isolated. We've got no access to the records, we've got no access to electronic prescriptions, we've got no access to investigations on patients.
It's very serious. I mean, this is something that we have been worrying about for a long time, this kind of wide-scale attack on UK critical national infrastructure. And although in this case it's not cyber terrorism, which was really the big concern, it has exactly the same impact. It's got the same level of impact on society, on the functioning of the things that we depend on.
Latest information suggests as many as 40 health trusts may now be affected. The message to patients is hardly reassuring. Paul Davies, ITV News.
Ben Chapman is outside Kingsmill Hospital in Nottinghamshire tonight. Ben, describe the impact there.
Well, this hospital declared a major incident after taking the decision at about 2 o'clock this afternoon to switch off all of its computer systems. Now, what that means is for the last 4 hours or so, they have been relying on paper In practice, that means for things like test results, requests for test results, they have to be physically walked now down to the lab. If a patient is having an X-ray or radiology, the results can't be sent electronically to the doctor. The doctor has to go and actually look at those results in person in the room, and all of that is just piling a huge amount of extra pressure on the staff here. Now, the NHS Trust here says there is no evidence that it has actually been attacked. It says it took this action as a precaution, part of a plan to protect the safety and welfare of its patients, and as part of that it has cancelled some clinics and all elective operations scheduled for this weekend.
OK, Ben, thank you. Our security editor, Rohit Katru, is here. And Rohit, I mean, it's fair to say that the NHS actually had feared something like this for a while, hadn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Alongside the British banking industry, the NHS is really one of the most vulnerable areas of our society to cyber attacks like this one. Vulnerable in part because of its fairly old and fragmented computer systems, but vulnerable too because of the value of the information that's held on some of its systems. In fact, the head of security at NHS Digital recently wrote, "I'll say this up front, cyber attacks have and will affect patient care." This sort of attack is fairly familiar, but the scale of this attack is absolutely unprecedented. And so one question now, of course, was this a nation state or was this an individual? One line of inquiry that's already being raised is the possibility of a hacking group using tools that were perhaps stolen from a nation state.
And you talk about the scale of it. It's emerging that it's not just the NHS tonight that's been affected by this.
And all sorts of organisations, from Vietnam to Spain to Italy. In fact, Spain was one of the first countries to be hit, and authorities there talking about Telefonica, the telecoms company, which was struck, saying this was a massive attack affecting Microsoft systems. This is really a wake-up call to everyone about the danger of potential danger of cyber attacks, which can be as great to our national infrastructure as bombs and bullets.
Indeed. Rohit, thank you. And if you want the latest on this cyber attack, particularly if you want advice on what to do about the NHS, go to our website, itv.com/news. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn went on the offensive over defence today, insisting he's not a pacifist and the UK's security is his #1 priority. He took aim at Theresa May, accusing her of pandering to Donald Trump. And although Mr Corbyn says he would renew Trident, he was less clear on whether he was prepared to use nuclear weapons. Rachel Younger is following the Labour campaign and sends this report.
The next Prime Minister of UK. Thanks, Sarah.
If in 4 weeks' time it is the door of #10 that beckons for Jeremy Corbyn, he will have no greater responsibility than to defend the people of this country. A lifelong opponent of war, today he insisted he's no pacifist.
But let me make this absolutely clear. If elected Prime Minister, I would do everything to protect the security and safety of our people and our country. That is our first duty.
Today we are once again demonstrating on the Iraq war.
Jeremy Corbyn once led the Stop the War campaign. Since then, more and more people have come round to his way of thinking on Iraq, Afghanistan and Libya.
The war on terror has been driven, which has driven these interventions, has not succeeded. It has not increased our security at home. In fact, many would say just the opposite.
So he doesn't want Britain's foreign policy to be as closely linked to Washington, accusing this man of making our world more dangerous.
Britain deserves better than simply outsourcing our country's security and prosperity to the whims of the Trump White House. So no more hand-holding with Donald Trump.
But it's the relationship with his own party on Trident that's most problematic. This was last year.
I do not believe the threat of mass murder is a legitimate way to go about dealing with international relations.
The problem is Labour wants to keep Britain's nuclear deterrent. Today, Corbyn had to acknowledge that, although the words seem to stick in his throat.
Labour's support for the renewal of the Trident system doesn't preclude from working for meaningful multilateral steps to achieve reductions in nuclear arsenals.
If his commitment wasn't emphatic, the Conservative response was.
I'm genuinely alarmed. Whatever you may think about the American administration, it is vital that we have strong relations with with Washington and that we keep a strong North Atlantic alliance.
But in Portsmouth, relatives waiting for the return of HMS Daring from Syria were split along generational lines.
I think we do need military forces, we do need to be able to protect our country, but I think what Jeremy Corbyn's trying to say is that we use it when we have to, but not for the sake of using it.
I don't trust him, and that's it, simple as that. Because he's saying one thing and he drops and changes.
Jeremy Corbyn would argue he's supported an ethical foreign policy for decades. Whether his approach is one of integrity or naivety will be up to voters to decide. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
The Liberal Democrats have confirmed they would legalise cannabis for people aged over 18 if they were to win the general election. The party said by introducing a legal, regulated market for the drug, they would generate £1 billion in taxes, money they would reinvest into drug education. The Prime Minister has launched the Conservative battle bus. Theresa May spent the day campaigning in North East England. Now, if you have a question for Theresa May, then get involved in ITV News Leaders Live. We've invited all the party leaders to take part. Mrs May will be live on the ITV News Facebook page from 3 o'clock on Monday afternoon. If you want to put your question directly to her, head to facebook.com/ITV News. Prosecutors are considering charges against 18 British soldiers over the Bloody Sunday shootings more than 40 years ago. A murder investigation into the deaths of 14 civil rights protesters was completed by police in Northern Ireland late last year. Well, our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is here. What kind of charges are they looking at?
Well, these 18 former soldiers, and that number 18 does seem quite high, it shows the extent of this inquiry, are facing possible charges of murder, attempted murder, wounding, joint enterprise and perjury. The perjury allegations relate to evidence that they gave to the Bloody Sunday inquiry itself at a time when the soldiers were in London and the inquiry was sitting in Londonderry. Viewers will remember 1972, Bloody Sunday, when members of the parachute regiment opened fire on a civil rights march, and eventually 14 people were killed. After many years, there was a long public inquiry into this, out of which these charges, or these consideration of charges, has come. The Public Prosecution Service in Belfast is still quite a long way from deciding whether or not there will actually be charges, but this will be controversial, because if these men are found guilty of anything, they could face long prison sentences. If they were, say, IRA men in the same situation, under the Good Friday Agreement, they would only go to jail for 2 years.
OK, thank you, Carl. President Trump has issued a thinly veiled threat to the former FBI chief whom he sacked 2 days ago. In a tweet, Mr Trump said James Comey had better hope there were no tape recordings of their conversations. As our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports, it has worrying echoes of the Watergate scandal.
This was the interview that was intended to calm the waters.
Thanks for doing this.
It did precisely the opposite.
Maybe right here.
For it's now clear, in the president's own words, that the investigation into alleged links with Russia was a factor in the ruthless firing of the FBI director.
When I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election.
He's become more famous than me.
But will James Comey speak out and contradict the president he once served? There has been no sign of Comey outside his house in Virginia today. But in a further jarring twist, the president appears to be threatening the former director, hinting that their talks in the White House may have been secretly recorded. Trump tweeted, "James Comey better hope there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press." That evokes memories of the darkest secrets of Nixon's corrupt administration, which culminated with the startling revelation that covert tape recorders had been installed in the White House.
Are you aware of the installation of any listening devices in the Oval Office of the President?
I was aware of listening devices. Yes, sir.
Democrats are now turning up the heat, saying Trump's behavior has crossed the line.
From a legal standpoint and from an everyday person standpoint, it's shocking to the conscience. And so we've got to address that.
President Trump is dangerous. Dangerous because he may be obstructing justice in terms of the investigation that really goes to the heart of our democracy.
Tonight, the questions are only growing. Do secret audio recordings really exist? And if so, Would Trump ever hand them over to investigators? Well, some in Congress are already demanding access to such recordings if they exist, and James Comey himself reportedly is saying he hopes they exist, suggesting he feels he would be vindicated if those audio recordings emerge. Now, President Trump was due to visit the FBI headquarters today, but perhaps wisely given the mood in the building against him, he has now cancelled that tour, and he remains somewhat beleaguered and out of view inside the White House.
Robert Moore, live in Washington. Thank you. Still to come on the ITV Evening News. Knives, axes and air guns, the shocking weapons seized in schools in England and Wales. And Portugal becomes the latest holiday destination hit by the fake food poisoning scam. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. Thousands of weapons, including axes and swords, have been seized from school children, some as young as 5. Police chiefs in England and Wales said there'd been a worrying rise in the number of young people carrying knives. One teacher who was stabbed by a pupil in his classroom told Damon Green that more needs to be done to tackle knife crime.
Vincent still has the scars to prove the damage a knife can do in the classroom. He was working as a supply teacher in a school in Bradford when one of his own pupils carried out an attack which might have cost him his life.
The boy came from behind, while I was writing learning objectives on the board. So he attacked me from behind, and it's still quite traumatic when I think about it. When he pulled out the knife, I could see, very long, knife stained with blood. So, I thought I was dying because instantly as I started feeling cold.
Details from 32 police forces in England and Wales showed more than 2,500 weapons were seized in schools in the 2 years to March, indicating a rise of around 20%. Most, around 71%, were knives, but they also included samurai swords, axes and 26 guns, air guns or imitation guns. At least 47 of the children were below 10 years old, including 3 who were just 5.
They carry because they say they feel safer if they carry a knife, which of course is stupid, because if you're carrying a knife you're more likely to have a fight and get it used back on you.
The teenager who attacked Vincent was arrested and finally sentenced to 11 years in custody. His victim believes the best way to protect others is to speak to pupils who carry knives to find out why.
The school, the parents, the society, can actually put heads together and see ways to bring this number down. Otherwise, if they are carrying weapons in school, it means they're also carrying it around outside the school, on the streets, wherever, because nobody searches them.
Vincent was lucky to recover. He hopes nobody else will have to endure what he did simply because somebody brought a knife to school. Damon Green, ITV News, in West Yorkshire.
An inquest into the death of a schoolboy who had an allergic reaction while he was in detention has revealed staff failed to use an EpiPen that could have saved his life. Nasser Ahmed went into anaphylactic shock from a reaction to milk in his school lunch. He later died from a brain injury caused by the reaction. The Foreign Office has issued a new warning to millions of UK tourists travelling to Portugal. It's an attempt to stop a massive rise in fraudulent claims for food poisoning. Now, last night we exclusively revealed how touts are now encouraging holidaymakers to join that scam. Our consumer editor Chris Troy is here, and there have been some developments today.
I have a lot of people think this is outrageous behaviour. First of all, this development whereby 2 million Brits headed to Portugal this summer have the warning that already exists in Spain, which is where one shameless tout was secretly filmed. Have a look at this.
They go, oh, I felt ill, but yeah, I didn't do anything about it. And they go, all right, well, we'll have to take your word for it kind of thing. Here's £1,000. And then there's the other ones where we can word them up and go, so you had a phone consultation with your GP, gotcha. And then they get £3,000.
Well, it's that kind of thing that has led to this new travel advice. Let me take you through it now. Here it is. It's on the government website. If you make a false or fraudulent claim, you may face legal proceedings in the UK or Portugal, it warns. And in a separate development today, the travel trader said if this practice continues, it may well start to have an impact on holiday prices. And we've seen a survey of 2,000 consumers showing 46% believe it is acceptable to make a claim even if you're not sure if the hotel is to blame for your food poisoning. We've also been shown new research by specialist lawyers showing that the touts don't just hang around in the resorts, they're now checking into the hotels and infiltrating guests.
Good grief. Chris, thank you. And finally tonight, just when you thought it was safe to go back into the shark-infested sea of Southern California.
Attention in the water. This is the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Be advised you are paddleboarding next to approximately 15 great white sharks. Exit the water in a calm manner. The sharks are as close as the surf line.
Well, thankfully, the paddleboarders left the water with no one hurt. It comes as shark sightings in Southern California have jumped, with lifeguards now put on high alert. They are braver than me. And that's all for now from me. Nina Hussain will be here with the news at 10. But from me and all the team here on the Evening News, have a very good night. Bye-bye.